Life is what you make of it. I had a conversation a few days ago with a guy at work, and he kept saying that. I kept noticing that he was saying, life is what you make of it. And I didn't think too much about it in that moment, but when I reflected upon the conversation, I realized how much it applied. Even within that conversation, I saw how it applied. I often like to try and talk to the people I interact with at work. He was a driver, and I like to try and spark up conversations with these people just to practice social skills. And sometimes you're not really feeling it. You don't feel like they're giving you the signal that you need to start the conversation. And that was how I went into this conversation. I didn't really feel like I didn't really feel like he wanted to talk to me, but despite that, I asked him, how do you like driving? And from that, the conversation was able to grow into a much better interaction than it would have if I had just gone with my initial feelings of the situation. And that was what I made of it. If I had just kind of gone with those feelings of he just doesn't want to talk to me, then we'd never had that good interaction that we had. But because I asked him a question and started a conversation, we were able to have a pretty in-depth conversation. And so it was what I made of it. And that really brought me to something that I heard of recently. I originally heard of it from this channel called The Newell of Knowledge, which I'll link in the description. And he described this concept called mirrored reciprocation. It was created by this guy named Peter Kaufman. He's like a CEO. He's associated with Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett. And he kind of created this idea. And I think it's a really powerful idea. And I think it's something we've all experienced. And the three examples he gives, first he talks about Newton's third law as an example of mirrored reciprocation. Let me read it out for you. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. This means that when one object exerts a force on another object, the second object exerts an equal force back in the opposite direction. And so that was his first example of mirrored reciprocation. You push off the ground pushes off you. Or a cannon shoots a cannonball, it shoots the ball, pushes the ball in this direction, and the ball pushes the cannon in this direction. So that's why you got that sort of recoil. The other example he gives is like your pets. So you're probably pretty friendly with your dog, and in turn your dog is pretty friendly with you. You get home and your dog is all excited to see you. You're excited to see your dog, versus if you maybe were not the greatest pet owner and you're abusive to your animal, your dog is not going to be very friendly when it sees you. It's going to mirror your energy. It's mirrored reciprocation. It's going to potentially bite you. It's going to mirror whatever energy you give to that animal. It's going to mirror back at you. And the third example he gives is something that I think we've all experienced, and it's the experience I had, where let's say you get in an elevator and maybe the person doesn't smile at you, or they don't even look at you. And so what do? You don't look at them, or you don't smile at them, versus, let's say you get in an elevator and that person says, "Hey, good morning." So you're like, "Hey, good morning," So it's mirrored reciprocation. Um, you're kind of mirroring each other's energy. And I'll link the talk that he describes that in below. He goes much more depth and explains it far better than I could. But I just kind of noticed how that applied to that context and that interaction I had with this person. And how similar those ideas kind of were, mirrored reciprocation, and it is what you make of it. And it kind of makes me think about like systems thinking, and like you think about inputs and outputs. So like the input, you have the input, and you have the process, and you have the output and the feedback. So the input is what you're making of it. If I'm going into the interaction with positive energy, I'm smiling, I'm like, "Hey, good morning." And you have the process, you have the interaction. And then the output is like what you get from the conversation, or the conversation as a whole. And then I suppose the feedback is just your reflection on the conversation. A prime example of inputs and outputs. An input would be, for me, I train jiu-jitsu a lot. So the input is me putting my energy into training and spending a lot of time training. Then you have the process of training, and then you have the output of getting better, and then you can reflect in the feedback stage of that. So then when it comes back to the input, where you're going back to training, you can approach it in a better manner, hopefully, a more effective manner, or continue doing what you're doing if it was successful. And, it's a feedback loop. So that's just another example of inputs and outputs and what you make of it. It is what you make of it. What you put in, you get out, There's a quote from Alex Hormozy, and I'm paraphrasing, but roughly he says, "Lack of belief leads to lack of effort, and lack of effort leads to lack of results." So if I don't believe this person wants to talk to me, then I'm not gonna smile at them. I'm not gonna try to talk to them, and so they're not gonna talk to me, And I think that applies well outside of just interactions. I mean, it's most definitely still powerful in the context of interactions and conversing with people, but I think it applies in a broader sense of life and goal pursuit. And I guess I'm still figuring out how much it applies, and I'm still realizing how much it applies. But it's something to think about. It is what you make of it. There's a quote, and I might botch this, but it's something along the lines of, "He who believes he can't and he who believes he can are both right." That might be off, so forgive me if that's incorrect, but the general idea is whether you believe you can or cannot, you're correct. Because it's your belief that really matters. So, become aware of your beliefs and shape your beliefs into the reality that you want. Or maybe more accurately, shape your beliefs to create the reality that you want. Now I just want to end this video on a quote from, I'm assuming it's originally from Peter Kaufman. Perhaps somebody said it before him, but he says, "Go first, go positive, and be constant in doing so." So, in that interaction with the trucker, I described at the start of this video, I went first, and I went positive. I came at him, or I began the interaction with him in a curious manner. So I was a little bit more positive than if I had came with the energy that I thought I was picking up, and maybe I gave him some attitude at the start. Then that wouldn't be positive. It would be first, but it wouldn't be positive. And you need to be consistent in doing so, because just doing that one is not going to get you one time. Just doing that one time is not going to get you anywhere. It needs to become a habit. It needs to become a part of your life to really gain the full benefit. It needs to be constant. So go first, go positive, and be constant in doing so.